Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley. Thanks for stopping by today. In this month's edition of the Ellen Hutson newsletter, we're going to be doing some trapping. And I'm not talking about some primitive form of hunting. Oh, no. No animals will be harmed in the process of this card making, but we're going to be doing some trapping with embossing powder. I'm going to be using these sets from the Essentials by Ellen line, as well as this craft board. It's a nice, sturdy, thick material. It has some give to it. It's not quite as thick as a chipboard, but it is much heavier duty and it can stand up to a lot more than a heavyweight cardstock. And you saw me also show there at the beginning that I'm going to be using the Wow Ultra High Clear Gloss Embossing Powder for this. So I've gone ahead and used a circle die to cut some circles from my craft board, and it cuts beautifully using your regular die cutting sandwich. And now I am going to apply some stick-it adhesive to the back of this mulberry cardstock. This is from Basil. It's a nice purple color, and that's because I'm going to be using the Wild Garden dies to cut this cardstock. And I wanted some adhesive already on the back of it because they are a little bit more intricate, and it will make it much easier when I go to adhere these to the craft board circle. So I'm going to run this through. I'm using my precision base plate. I probably didn't need my precision base plate. If you don't have a precision base plate, you can always add an extra shim to your die cutting sandwich, but I have it and I tend to use it quite a bit, and I get really good results when I'm cutting these intricate die cut shapes. So now I'm just going to kind of arrange these die cuts onto my craft board circle here, and I'm going to kind of play with my arrangement until I find something that I like. Now, the beautiful thing about stick-it adhesive is that I can go ahead and pull off the backer and place this down onto my craft board circle, and I do have some wiggle room. Until you really press this down and create that seal on your surface, you can kind of move things around. So you're going to see me apply these, kind of lift up the edge and slide this underneath. And because I haven't pressed that stick-it adhesive really firmly down onto my surface, I can go ahead and wiggle those in and I don't have any problem. And it's not tearing the surface of the craft board or anything like that. So once I get these all applied, finally, I'm going to go ahead and use my scissors to cut the excess off, the portion that's overhanging the die cut circle, because I need this all to be contained on that circle. And then once I get that trimmed down, I'm going to run this through my die cut machine again. There's no dies here. I'm just using that to press this cardstock into that craft board, and it creates this really cool, almost like inlaid die cut effect. That craft board has quite a bit of give, so it really allows that cardstock to press into the surface of it. So I have that one ready for my trapping technique, and now I'm going to go ahead and stamp on this other craft board circle. I'm using some Lilac Posies ink and the Mondo Peony stamp from the Essentials by Ellen line to just stamp that on there. It is a pigment ink, so I went ahead and heat set it with my heat tool, and then I can use a piece of this craft board kind of as a handle. So I've just taken a scrap of it. I'm applying some ATG adhesive to it, and I'm going to slide it under my die cut circle there, my craft board circle, kind of press it on really well, and that's going to act as my handle as I do my trapping technique. So now I have my pieces all prepped and ready to go, and we're going to start the trapping technique. And I'm just using my Versamark ink pad, and I'm pressing it all over the surface of these craft board circles. Now this is where the craft board really comes into play, because a regular cardstock would not hold up to the amount of heat and embossing powder that we're applying. You may be able to get away with stacking up a couple of pieces of like some heavyweight cardstock, but I really recommend something like a craft board, or even those inchies work really well for this. So once I have the Versamark ink over the entire surface of the circle, I can go ahead and apply my Wow Ultra High Clear Gloss Embossing Powder. Now you can try this with a regular embossing powder, but the granules on this Ultra High embossing powder are much larger, and so you get a much thicker coating of embossing all at once. Now you're going to notice here I'm heating mostly from the back, and that's because these granules are so large that if you apply your heat tool to the front immediately, it's going to blow the granules off. It is not a super fine embossing powder. It doesn't it has too much weight to it in order to stick really well. So you'll see me heat from the back initially, and once it starts to really melt, then I move to heating towards the front. And you can see here, I'm actually repeating this process. So I'm adding the embossing powder, I'm melting it, I'm allowing it to cool, and then I'm adding another layer of Versamark ink, another layer of the ultra high embossing powder, and then remelting again. And I did that a total of 3 times. This piece here, I just added a little bit of the Wow Rich Pale Gold embossing powder around the edge, and I'm going to take it off of its handle and I'm going to pop it in the freezer for about 5 minutes. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but I'm going to do a cracking technique on that one right there with the die cuts on it, and so I'm going to put it in the freezer, which is going to allow me to make some really cool cracks in it. While that's freezing, I am going to go ahead and pick out some pattern paper from the Lovely Day pattern paper pad. And this is now frozen, about 5 minutes worth, and I'm just taking and I'm bending this back to create cracks in the surface. It kind of creates this faux tile technique. In fact, I think Julie did this before and called it a faux mosaic tile technique. I like to call it trapping because we're actually trapping things underneath several layers of embossing powder. So I'm sure there's a whole lot of different names out there, and I'm sure my name isn't correct for this technique, but I like to call it that, and so that's what we're going to call it today. Now, I've gone ahead and taken some pattern paper from the Lovely Day pattern paper pad, and I am just taking little strips of it. I'm cutting this piece into a banner end. I really love the combination of this bright kind of orchidy purple with the bright green. It's one of my favorite combinations. And then, of course, I threw in a little strip of black and white pattern paper too, because, you know, that is my thing. And I'm going to adhere it onto a card front that's created from the Die Cuts with a View Craft 6x6 pad. It's a really nice craft paper pad. It's the perfect size for card makers. And I'm just making these as card fronts so I can apply them to a card base later on. Now, I went ahead and adhered my circles onto my card fronts using some foam adhesive. For that second card there, I'm using the exact same pattern papers. I'm just using a little bit different configuration of them. And I've die cut some sentiments from some Nina Solar White cardstock. This is the Hello, or the Brushstroke Hello from the Essentials by Ellen line. And then I'm just going to kind of layer this up. Now, because the Craft-A-Board circles have all that embossing powder, it's really cool. It gives it like a really dimensional, domed, glossy look, but it is harder to adhere things to. So I'm using the multi-medium in the matte finish to adhere my die cut sentiments onto that, and then I'm placing a heavy block over the top. Now, you don't have to just trap die cuts or simple stamped images. I'm also going to trap some coloring underneath my embossing as well. So I've gone ahead and colored this on a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock, and then I adhered it to a die cut of the Craft-A-Board as well. So the Craft-A-Board is behind there. And I'm going to go through the same steps of applying the Versamark ink and the ultra high embossing powder and melting that. And I'm going to do it 3 times. And you can see I end up with this super cool enamel look over the entire top of my nail polish bottle there. And I just love the way it turned out. So here's a look at the completed projects for today, a really cool and fun technique that you can try. If you don't have the ultra high embossing powder, you can try it with a regular embossing powder, but chances are you're going to need a lot more layers. And you can also experiment to see how many layers that you like for the result that you want. As always, I'll have links to the featured products in the description at YouTube, but head on over to the InTouch blog. I'll link the coordinating blog post below, and I'll have more still shots there, more information, and links to all the products used in these projects. All these products are available for purchase at ellenhudson.com. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed these projects, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.